Hello, bridge builders! I'm here with some exciting news. The first volume of interviews is now available on Amazon.com. The link can be found at eatlunchandboardgame.com. I promise that all proceeds from sales of this book will go right back into this podcast and channel. Whether that is new and better audio equipment for the podcast, or video equipment for the YouTube channel, or even more games to review, the money will not be wasted. Click over to Amazon and get your copy of Eat Lunch and Board Game, the first course today. And thank you for supporting the show.
Stay in tune with all things sports around Indiana and the nation with the Crash Course podcast. Each week, we tackle the big storylines from the world of the Colts, Pacers, and the Indiana college scene, while also keeping a pulse on the nation. We record live weekly at twitch.tv/3cmedia and can be found on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can catch the Crash Course podcast.
In this episode, I'm joined by the COO of Amigo Games, Alex Yager. He's been around the industry for quite some time, has some great selection of games that I've never heard of, and he has some accomplishments that most people cannot claim to have. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Eat Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins, and with me today is the COO of Amigo Games, Alex Yager. Alex, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come along and chit-chat today.
Oh, well, I try to find people all over the industry. I try to find people from different companies. Amigo Games is one of my favorite gaming companies because you guys go after some of the old classic games that are old Spiel des Jahres winners and keep them in production. And I really appreciate that because Heimlich and Company and Escape from Haunted Mansion are two of the most entertaining games to break out and show people because they're from like the 80s and yet you wouldn't even know it. And I just greatly appreciate. I wish you guys would go after more of the old Spiel des Jahres games that seem to be out of print. That should be like your main focus. If I could throw one thing at you.
There are a lot of games, and ultimately, you realize that things like Bonanza, which is going on 25th anniversary, that started at Amigo. That has been with Amigo the whole time. Things like No Thanks, it's coming up on a big anniversary. Take 5, we're about to go into it. I think Saboteur is about to do its 20th anniversary. And those are ones that started at Amigo and have been with Amigo throughout. Amigo is one of the companies that has done a remarkable job, over the 40 years it has been around, of finding and developing games that can stand the test of time. And there's a gentleman by the name of Uwe Multier, who was an editor at Amigo for a very long time, and he was there for that heyday of he's the one that signed Bonanza and Take 5, and just an incredible output of games that had his name, his imprint on them. And so I've been working with Amigo when I was with Mayfair, even as a licensor for almost 20 years, and there are people that are at the company that have been there for 20 plus years as employees. It's really remarkable in the industry, in the hobby game industry, to find people that can not only have a job, but can have a job that has been sustained over that length of time. And so it's a terrific company to be working for, and I love every day.
I'm telling you, No Thanks. I came across that. I do a lot of reading, which is, again, we talked earlier, that's how I come across so many different people that I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to this guy and this person, and this woman and that woman. And I came across No Thanks and was like, this game sounds awesome. And then it was at Target hanging on a peg next to Uno for like $7. And I'm like, well, it'd be stupid not to buy this game. And so I bought it and I'm like, oh my gosh, what an amazing game with 32 cards and some chits or tokens.
Yeah. Yep.
Holy cow. Everybody I show that game to, they're just like, where do I get this? I'm like, Target. Just hanging next to Uno.
Game stores, all sorts. Yeah, I mean, it's really, and one of the, and we really do try. There's on all of the family level games that we publish. There's a set of 4 icons we put on the back of them, and one of those icons is 5 rules or less. We're literally, I could teach you this game in 5 core rules or less in some instances, and it's some people just can't understand until they actually encounter something like No Thanks, that there is still a tremendous amount of gameplay there for as few moving parts as there are in the rule book.
Oh man, I just took it to work and was playing with my coworkers at lunch, and I won the game, and all I had was a run from 28 to 35.
Nice.
That's all I had, but I had like 15 tokens, and so my score was like 13, and I'm like, that's hard to beat. But
yes,
I could sit there. I could just sit there and wait because nobody's going to take that 32. I mean, what are you going to do? Take the 32 so that I don't? Okay.
Yep.
I'll just sit back and wait. And they're like, what? And so you just see the tokens piling up. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, man. And then take 5. That's Wolfgang Kramer, right?
Yep, that is indeed.
Yeah. So that's on my list. I haven't got around to it yet. My wife tells me I have too many board games. I just tell her I don't have enough shelf space. There's just a different way to look at the same problem, right?
But it's a card game. Little card game. You have room for a little card game,
Yeah, I mean, so I do love Wolfgang Kramer. My goodness, he's had some amazing games in his time. Well, Heimlich and Company was his.
Yep.
And oh my gosh, that game's a hoot. I'm terrible at it. I never win, but man, I love to play it. How did you know I was Italy? I didn't even I just moved everything all willy-nilly. Oh no, man. You subconsciously were moving Italy, right? And I'm like, was I? Well, that's weird.
It was funny. The last time I played it, I think I ended up having to leave the game partway, and I put my stuff down, and I said, and basically it said, I just kind of made the random announcement, I'm going to win. And sure enough, they finished out that third round. I won, and they had no idea how. And it was like, well, you already think I'm this other person, so you're going to move this other one a whole bunch, whatever country I was, you're going to move them because you already think that I'm this other company. So I can leave now. You're just going to let me, you're going to help me win, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So.
Oh, man. So, Alex, how did you get into gaming?
It's a long story, so I'll give you the long version of the short version, which is I'm certainly through high school. I got connected up with a game, kind of a small game group. It wasn't anything regular. It was just sort of a group of people who played games. And we played Illuminati and a lot of Cosmic Encounter, the old Eon edition, which I still have my well-loved, pretty much roached out at this point, Eon edition Cosmic Encounters, which no one barely would want to touch at this point. But, it's kind of that touchstone for everything that came after that. Then in 1990, I did some role playing in high school and in college, so I kind of had that experience as well. But in 95, when Illuminati New World Order, the collectible card version of Illuminati came out, I went down that rabbit hole hard. I have 0.6% of the limited edition run of that game in my house. It's rounding up, I have 1 out of every 100 cards they did the limited edition run of that game sitting upstairs in my closet, and I really, really, really was intrigued and fascinated by that game, even more, because I had done a little Magic on the side and some stuff like that. But this was my game. This was my jam. And so I got connected up with the Steve Jackson folks at that point, and was doing a little bit of playtesting for them. I was volunteered when they started the MIB program in 97. I was one of the charter MIBs in that program. I was at Origins or Gen Con whenever it was released, and as part of the team that was selling Munchkin for the very first time into the public. And even that's one of my game design credits I have in the industry, is I did my pitch for that very first show that they had Munchkin at, because I had basically a 1-minute pitch, which became a thing called 1-Minute Munchkin, which became the retailer demo kit for Munchkin. I mean, they've done a couple of them, but they always credit me for the design of sort of the little retailer kits.
That's awesome.
Based on my 1-Minute Munchkin I did for them. So that was connecting me to Steve Jackson. Started doing a little playtesting for them. When Cheap Ass Games founded Mark One, I was one of the founding rabbits for them, and then our demo monkeys, and then because Rabbits was Looney Labs, and then eventually I connected up with the Mayfair. It was Will Niebling, who was the CEO of Mayfair at the time, who lives here in Ann Arbor, near where I do, and started doing some stuff for Mayfair. Had my audition where we did UK Gen Con and Essen in 2004. Got hired that next spring, and was with Mayfair until it was sold, and then a couple of years with Steve Jackson Games, and now I'm with Amigo.
It's awesome.
But started as volunteer.
I mean, there you go. So many people they underestimate that volunteering, and volunteering with a game company is a great way to get in and get to know people and start your.
It's a critical way, and it's not only the fact that you're volunteering for the company because you love a game. It's like, wow, I really like Catan, so I want to volunteer for Catan or Asmodee in this instance, and that's fine. That's we have lots of volunteers they're here kind of casually. They want to play their favorite game, with a bunch of people, and that's cool. What the opportunity that volunteering does is you get to see a little glimpse of what the business mechanisms of a game company look like. So it's not just I'm here to demo a game. You get to see, well, here's how we have to set the booth every morning. This is how we have to, this is our schedule to make sure that everyone gets done. This is what stocking and shelving looks like as part of a booth, and you get to see it up close. Are we, how quickly are things selling? What are we doing to be able to keep flow in the booth? How are we attracting people to do our demos? And all of those things, if you are paying attention as a volunteer, are things that can serve you if you decide you really do want to make a career out of this. You get those first glimpses of all these elements of what it takes to put on a convention appearance by being in that booth and being around the people that have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a small game publishing company that I run with my friend, and we've got a bunch of booths got a couple coming up in July, one in October. We're not at Gen Con, obviously. The wait list for that's a bit long and a bit expensive for us. So
yes, it is.
but we walk around to the other booths, see how everybody else is doing it. Kind of, how can we mimic that? How can we use what they're doing that's working well for them and apply that to our small booth? So, speaking of conventions, welcome back to the convention scene, right?
Indeed, both the professional ones are distributor shows and gift shows, as well as the regular consumer circuit. And that's one of the things that Amigo really has a foot in two different worlds, because yes, we sell into hobby and with distributors and all the sort of familiar ways that people know how to get games or kind of aware of, but we also do a lot of business with mass market with our sales groups. So we have sales groups that send out representatives, buyers throughout the U.S. to specialty toy stores and to sort of the children's toy stores to sell our games. And it's a very different sort of thing, and it's a very different convention circuit to be able to attend those. So really everything's firing up. And in the case of us, me, when I was hired in 2020, I had never done a lot of those, certainly never done any of the gift shows. I've done obviously things like New York Toy Fair and some of the non-consumer side shows that Mayfair had done. But it's been very interesting kind of seeing these come back. And those are obviously different than they were in the before time as well. So everyone's sort of feeling their way around as to what the new normal is at these shows. But
Yeah.
yes, they are starting to occur fast and furious again.
Yeah, I went to Geekway here in St. Louis in May. That was a good one, and I will be out at CantCon in Kansas City here at the end of July. So I'll probably be back out to the other one in November, and then one in Cincinnati. So just trying to stay close, stay the cheaper ones, the more not cheaper as much as more affordable ones. Let's put it that way. We don't have a huge offering.
There's a borderline that small companies have to kind of, you always have that idea of, it would be great to go to Origins or go to Gen Con. And for almost anybody, even a large company, you get to those shows, and what you are dealing with is a marketing expense, not really a sales opportunity. I mean, yes, you can sell games, but you will never make enough money to make up for your presence at those shows and all the staff you have to bring and all the events you have to run and everything you need to do in order to make those shows happen. I mean, we at Mayfair regularly cleared, we would regularly hit about that 6-digit mark on sales, and that was 25% maybe of what we were spending to attend those shows, between sponsorships and staff and hotel rooms and food and all the things that kind of feed into that. So ultimately you get to a big show like that and you're looking at 25 to 50% of your sales, that's then your expenses may be covered by sales. So it makes a lot more sense if you want to go to a small show where you can get a table for $50 or $100 or something and actually have an opportunity to turn a profit. There's no shame in that at all. That is a terrific way to not lose a lot of money and not go have a bunch of stuff piled up on a credit card. As a small publisher, take advantage of those smaller opportunities where you've got you're kind of the bigger fish in a smaller pond, as well as just not having to spend the kind of money you have to do to go to a big show.
Yeah, and we've been lucky too, working with some other small St. Louis ones. We've kind of banded together and became the St. Louis Small Games Publishers, and we kind of travel as a group. So we kind of split the cost 2 or 3 ways depending on how many of us are going, which also helps keep the expense down to the individual gaming company. So we were happy with Geekway. We had a good time. It was good to go back and just see a whole bunch of people out there playing games again. I missed that.
I really would like to visit Geekway at some point. It's a show that I really enjoy, St. Louis as well. So the opportunity to do a show there, and one that a lot of people talk about as being a really good show.
It's just a great place to go. Yeah, just a great place to go play games. And this year, I'm trying to think. I think I played 6 or 7 new games. So not as many as I have in the past, but I can't argue with 6 or 7 games. So now some of them we played multiple times each. I'm not going to lie. There were some really good ones that we were like, wow, let's keep playing this game. So
yeah, and playing in live is, very much a thing again. And that's, sometimes you're just going to appreciate that a little bit more, even if the count is less. It's face to face, which is that much more appreciated.
Absolutely. You can only do so much. We do a lot of rolling rights and flipping rights and stuff like that over Zoom or whatever with my friends, but it's a little different when you're sitting across the table from them and they got that board in the middle, and it's just, it's a whole different feel. Yep. And it was a good one to have back. So I'm not going to complain. Maybe we'll cross paths at a convention yet later this year.
Possibly.
So, you said you're out of Michigan up there, and are you in the main part or the Upper Peninsula?
Oh no! We're down here. We're down here outside of Ann Arbor. We're in a little a neighboring community called Ypsilanti, or Poor Man's Ann Arbor, as we like to call it. We don't necessarily like to call it Ipsitucky, but it's kind of the vibe sometimes. But we are. So it's yes, we have this very, very weird name, which is actually a Civil War, not Civil War, a Revolutionary war general and a hero of the Greek of the Greek nation, who has ties to this area, and we are named after them. And we so our claims of fame are that a nice, vibrant little food and scene, because basically you can open up a store in Ypsilanti cheaply, and then if the concept works, then you can go downtown to Ann Arbor and pay the exorbitant rents and the city taxes and all that sort of thing. So
well, but you get to test your theory first. It's a proof of concept.
Absolutely.
Before why not?
Yeah.
So what is that? That's probably, I'm trying to think. Ann Arbor is what, about 6 hours from St. Louis? You got
7.5. I used to go to school in Terre Haute, Indiana. So that was about a 5.5 hour drive, and so another 2 down to St. Louis or so.
Did you go to Indiana State or Rose-Hulman?
I went to Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. Did not graduate from there, but I started my first 2 or 3 years there. So
I went to Purdue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right up the road. Right up the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you said you went to school in Terre Haute, I'm like, you either went to Rose-Hulman or Indiana State. That's
right. Yeah, and depending on and certainly in my era, if I'm male, there's only 2 choices. If you were female, there were 2 other choices. It was in ISU or there was a small, I think it's a religious college, would something another state, I think that's there as well. So at the time that I went, Rose-Hulman was all male, so it was those were my 2 choices: for Indiana State or that. And Indiana State was always humorous because, and I know we're really digressing here, but Indiana State always, and this gives you sort of that inferiority complex that I think that university has sometimes, was they always made a big deal that their education majors had one of the highest average incomes of any school in the nation. And what they neglect to point out is that one of those education majors was named Larry Bird.
Yeah.
And they threw his salary in with everybody else's. Bring that number up $10,000-$15,000 across the entire school, and that was the thing. So it was always like, education majors at ISU do really well, particularly if your last name is Bird.
Yeah, you did really well as an education major if you also happen to play in the NBA.
Exactly.
And win a lot of championships. Like a lot of money. I actually waited tables at Steak and Shake just outside Indianapolis where I grew up, and he came into that Steak and Shake one day when he was coaching the Pacers, and it's like, oh my God, Larry Bird at Steak and Shake. Our manager, who didn't do much, but he sure as heck waited that table. I can tell you that.
Yeah. It's amazing how suddenly it's not beneath me to serve a table. Somebody I really, really want to meet.
How'd that happen? So if I did make the 7.5 hour drive up to Michigan, what game is currently sitting on your table? What game are you currently playing?
Oh my. So literally sitting on my table right now, I have prototypes. I'm kind of going back and retroactively picking up some of the Time Stories things before those go gooey kablooey. Those are on clearance. I just got my Soulforge Kickstarter stuff, so we're going to dig into that. I'm quite the Ascension fan, and so I'm eager to see what they've come up with as far as that game goes. Also within arm's reach would be some odds and ends from Origins, all the expansions for Picture Perfect. I've got I think I've still got Golem sitting around. Gartenbau and Transmissions were my 2 plays over the weekend. Gartenbau was 25th Century Games. They had it out to Origins. I think it was a Kickstarter. They had Kickstarter copies there, which is kind of a rondel tile placement game, and Transmissions, which is sort of a run around the board, neutral pieces, and try and create engines. So with marvelous little robot pieces. So So yeah, it's a mix of stuff, a little bit of work still in here, like I said, with the prototypes and whatnot. So
Sure.
there's definitely some Amigo out there, but we'll really get to dig in our next. This is sort of the breather period for us, but we will be digging into our 2023 schedule with a Gen Con. Our folks from Germany will be over. They'll be bringing prototypes of all the new stuff, and we'll be actually sitting down and playing them together for the first time there.
That'll be awesome. That would
It
be
always
awesome.
is.
I bet. Yeah, I just been so. I got COVID. I should be on vacation right now, but I got COVID last week. Had to cancel my vacation, and so yeah, I gave it to everybody in the family too. I figured why not, right? It's, Christmas in June.
Yeah.
And so I went through a lot of the games that I picked up at Geekway with my son, and I was like, we had COVID, why not? So we just laid the mat out between us and fired up some games from Geekway that I picked up. So, like I said, the silver lining, the silver lining of COVID.
The COVID has been a very tricky dance to do here over the last, really since October last year. With or September, with Gen Con and Origins and all of that, and I think there are a lot of people that have are on both sides of the inconvenience of wearing a mask. But for those of us who are required to be there and required to be kind of fixed points in time, how much we still appreciate that mask mandate to be in effect, like in a dealer's room. Certainly we're taking it off when we go to eat, but those are circumstances that I feel like I can control a little bit more. So we've been eating out at a lot of places that have patios. We've been eating, taking stuff back to the room. We had a small suite at Origins where I could control a little bit of the number of people. And when we've had outbreaks at a lot of these shows, and certainly I've just come from 2 shows between Origins and Astra, which is sort of a specialty toy show. There were outbreaks there, but again, you had events where you would put 1,000 people in a room, and that sounds great. It sounds fun. Yay, we're all back. But that's where everyone had their mask off and was doing that, and where that, if there was an opportunity to spread, it didn't. There were several people that I know for a fact got COVID that I interacted with both at Origins and at Astra. And in both cases, we were fortunate that because of the mask mandates in place, we both had masks on. And despite that contact, I've been fortunate so far. And, tests can be wrong, but so far all the tests have come back negative. And that's, it looks very different when you're in your mid 50s or older, as some of our game industry titans are. To say, hey, let's just not worry about masks at all and kind of let chips fall where they may. At my age, at least when, initially in the pandemic, for me, it was roll a 1, 2, or 3 on a 100-sided die, and I die.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to roll the die in the first place, is what that comes down to. Sure. And so whatever I can do to minimize that risk and take care of those small things along the way, so much the better. And that's just, again, I really do appreciate those people that recognize that, if we're working in a booth, we get to talk to, we talk to anybody that wants to walk up and talk to us in whatever state they're in, whatever condition of health they are. And, so it's been good to, I said, we've been good to be able to do what we can to avoid it. And even to the point where I haven't had con crud coming out of any of these shows. So, masks and washing your hands. Who knew?
Yeah. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. It's craziness. Yeah. I didn't have the con crud coming out of Geekway. I guess I didn't think about that till right now. Yeah. I didn't have that 2 or 3 days of just whatever the heck that was coming up, and can't complain.
It's just that kind of generalized whenever you go. So I remember my first time going to Essen, and I'm literally drinking my water bottle in my room, and I read a thread. It's like, it's not that the water in Essen is bad. It's that the microbial mix and what they put in the water and what's there is just a different mix of stuff, and your body is likely to react poorly to it. And it's like, oh, well, that's good to know now. It's so building up the tolerance is a good thing as well. But I think, you get into a situation at those big shows that are international, and, it's just everybody's bugs, however benign, are being mixed together into a lovely little bacterial melange, and then that covers every surface that you have there. I'm not germophobic, but I get con crud, and it's pretty easy to draw the bright line between con crud and several tens of thousands of people's worth of low grade illnesses all dropped in a room at the same time.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. You're all playing games. Everybody's touching everything, and you're all touching everything else, and then and then I'll never forget, like, this article I read way back in high school, maybe in middle school, about how dirty money is. Just paper money is so dirty, and I'm like, yeah, it is. It's gross, and but we still use it because that's what currency is, I guess, right? So, working for Amigo, do you guys play a lot of games over lunch? Or is that kind of your break time of not playing games?
No, it's really, a lot of what I'm doing with my job has nothing to do with playing games at all. It's a lot of talking to stores and our buyers who are having issues or questions. It's a lot of planning, for our ads and whatnot, for working with Corey, who's our other person at Amigo. Right now, Amigo Games in the U.S. is a 2-person shop. And there's a lot of stuff that we have to do in order to keep, all of our balls in the air. Now, we have a tremendous team in Germany, which is able to do an awful lot of stuff for us as well. But at the end of the day, playing games really is kind of that step away from the job. What we do have the opportunity to play games with our folks in Germany, and we do that any opportunity that we get. We usually at the end of it, so we'll go over to Essen, and we'll take a few days on the backside of Essen. We'll visit the offices. We'll play through a bunch of stuff, and probably have at least one casual game night in there as well. So it's frustrating, especially when I live in Michigan, Corey lives in Austin, Texas. So there's no face-to-face without a tremendous amount of infrastructure to get everyone together in a room. And even when we get the entire company together, we're talking about a 2-player game. So, it's really, we really do take advantage as much as we can when we have the Germans that come over, when we're over there, to be able to sit down and play games as much as we can.
No, I would definitely take advantage of that if I were you. I would take advantage of playing any game anytime I can, which is why I started gaming at lunch with my coworkers in the first place. I like to play games, and then found some people that wanted to learn how to play games, and I'm like, well, I just so happen to have a few hundred of them that we can play. So
yeah. I remember for a kind of a public speaking thing at my previous job, which was automotive marketing research. I did a presentation on board games and intrigued enough people that we started that lunch hour gaming, and we would do that a few times a week. And that was a lot of fun, and people are attracted to it. I have this thing I kind of tell people, is that if you're working with kids get it. Kids understand when you say, we're going to play a game. They're like, great, I'm in. I like playing games. Adults, there are 2 steps you have to get through to get to the point of a kid, which is, number 1, you're allowed to play a game. You are, as an adult, this is not demeaning. This is not going to be, juvenile. This is not infantile. This is a thing that adults can do and can enjoy. And then, second step, I have chosen a game that is appropriate to you, that I think will be interesting, either in mechanism or in theme, and that this is a game that you will be intrigued and will enjoy. And once you get through those 2 steps, and however long and however much explanation you've got to get through to get them to the point of where a 7-year-old will just say, yep, I like games, let's play.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And that's, so my last company I worked at, I was just explaining this to my wife a couple nights ago. I brought gamers together, right? A whole bunch of gamers that all played games outside the office, and I brought them together in the office. And then we just really focused on like those 30 and 60-minute games that we could play in an hour. That was totally different than my company I'm at now, where I'm, like you said, I'm introducing them to games. Not that they don't know what games are, but they don't know this new hobby and hobby games. They don't know what's out there, right? And it's been great seeing the growth of the group by them seeing more and more people playing, that they are allowed to play. They are allowed to come to the lunch table and play a game. And then now, like you said, I've chosen these games specifically because they're lighthearted, fun games that we can play in an hour or less. Like No Thanks. That's a huge hit at my office because it I think people it's very approachable, right? It's just this little deck of cards and little black tokens, and it's very approachable. We've had a lot of luck with King of Tokyo, but I'm like, how can you not like King of Tokyo? It's rolling dice and your kaiju monsters beating each other up over the city of Tokyo, and it. I'm not playing the level of depth games that I was playing at my past company, but I'm making new gamers. Now these people are finding games and, oh, have you heard of this game or that game? And hey, I have got this game at home. Can we bring it in and play? And I'm like, I will play whatever you bring in. We had a huge game of Uno a couple weeks ago. I don't care. Throw it down. I mean,
for a lot of people, you have that. So you have those people that play one game. They play Boggle, they play Scrabble, they play whatever. That's their one game. So you introduce them to something else, and now there are two games that they'll play, and this or that. And ultimately, it feels like for me, 4 is kind of that magic number where if you have 4 games that you legitimately enjoy, you now, when you're confronted with it's going to be a game session that I have coming up here, you now start to have enough elements to be able to think about, well, how many players are we going to have? How much time are we going to have? How much table space are we going to have? And you start to think about games more critically, less from the standpoint of I like X game, but from the standpoint of I have so many players or I have so much time, and be able to choose a game. And once you get to that point, adding more games into that mix becomes really easy. This becomes, this is part of my 2-player game set that when I have 2 players around. Hey, this is my party game set. Hey, this is my economics game, or my games that take over an hour, sort of thing. And you begin to compartmentalize some of these things in a way that, again, really kind of accelerates suddenly your interest in games as a hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell my wife I need all these 4. There's different reasons why I have every one of these games.
Yes.
But
I have the library.
Yes.
The library.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And but no, it is interesting because, like, when we played a lot of Clue. And I love Clue. I think Clue is an underrated, underappreciated game. I mean, that game is what, 80 years old almost, because I think it came out just post World War II, so it's coming up on 80 years old. And so we played Clue because a lot of people knew the game of Clue. So I've got all these different versions of Clue, which is just adds a little mechanic here or there. But you take what they know, change it a bit, and now they know a new game or a new mechanic, and now they got that mechanic, so now we can play this game. And it's been kind of fun, like I said, introducing the new games and kind of creating like that roadmap of, we want to get to these games, but we want to get up there, but man, we got to work our way there. We can't just jump in. Believe me, if I could bring in a couple people know Catan, but that would only place 4, and we've got a traveling trophy, and everybody wants to play for the trophy. So when we have 6 or 7 players, we need something to play 6 or 7 people. So anyway, so if you did play at lunch, what would be your go-to 60-minute game, a 1-hour lunchtime game?
Well, in the Amigo world, certainly Take 5, Take 5, 6 NIMT. No Thanks is there. I really, really like Bonanza, and with a group that knows what they're doing, you can certainly crank that game out in over an hour. I'm just a huge negotiation, kind of guy, and I really like that. Back in the Mayfair day, I would pull out something like Pompeii, because who doesn't like throwing people into volcanoes?
Pompeii, the same. That's the same guy that did Carcassonne, right?
Klaus-Jürgen Reda, that one's within arm's reach, but yeah. So
I haven't. I've never played Pompeii. It's on my list. I want to play it really bad.
It is such a clever game in that it's a game of two parts. There's the part of you basically putting all your people out, and then the part of fleeing your people. And both of those parts of those games are so different, yet they come together so well and create such an interesting game. It's one of those games that I'm still amazed hasn't been picked up almost instantly by another company, because it's still as good a game. And it's one of those games that kids love it. Kids are like, "Don't throw me in the volcano, Daddy." And then, of course, it's throwing Daddy in the volcano.
Yeah.
Throwing Daddy in the volcano.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you work for a publishing company?
Yeah, I've a couple down the line. Yeah, that's a thing. So,
yeah. I mean, I want to play Pompeii. I think we've got a couple places around here in St. Louis that you can go kind of play test some older games. So I'm gonna see next time I go out there. I'll see if they got it.
But beyond that as well, I really like Star Realms. It's such an easy game to drop on a table. Any of the Ganshons, Ganshon Clever, Dry, all of them. Third one's one I wouldn't be pulling out casually, but certainly I can get anyone up to speed on that, or Bravo, or Quicks, or any of the, a lot of those roll and writes.
Oh yeah, Quicks, Quinto
are so easy to kind of get rocking.
Oh yeah, roll and writes became really big to me over the pandemic because I could play them over Zoom. All you need is everybody's got to have the scoreboard and the set of dice, and you can go for it. The clever games were huge. Quicks, Quinto, a lot of those strongholds.
And then of new designs, I've really had a lot of success showing people Project L, which is it went out of it was unavailable for a long time. They just got a new print run out, and Project L is basically a deck building polynomial game. So you start with basically two little Tetris pieces, and you have goal cards which are made up of adding these little polynomial pieces in, which allow you to get more pieces, which allow you to build larger polynomial puzzles, and you score points based on the complexity of the polynomial puzzles that you complete.
Interesting.
It is a brilliant little game, and it's one that we've been playing a lot of. I can reach back over here. So Project L.
And I've never heard of that one.
Yep. Nope. Terrific. That's a game that, like I said, we've had a lot of. We do a big convention, which is a coding convention in January every year. And so we come in and just curate the open game library. So it's a great opportunity to put a lot of games on the table, see what people are attracted to. And Project L was by far the star of the show this past year. It was the one that people just couldn't just played. And it's a really clever. I'm really hoping they'll get around to reprinting the expansions and whatnot that was part of the Kickstarter, the original Kickstarter. But the base game is at least somewhat available again, and it's a terrific game.
I'll have to try to track that one down.
Yeah, and then beyond that, we have the 2022 Kinderspiel des Jahres winner in our lineup, Magic Mountain, which, for all of it being a family game and certainly targeted that way, we have had so much fun playing that with hobby audience, just by the nature of the game. So, with just to kind of give you the 30-second description, you have a sloped channeled board with some figures on them, both good witches and bad witches, and you have 5 marbles which correspond to the colors of space on this path that kind of winds down the hill to the bottom of the hill. And so each turn you draw a marble out of the bag, You discuss amongst each other. It's a cooperative, which of the 6 starting channels you're going to drop it down. And then when you drop that marble, if it hits a figure, good or bad, it moves to the next space going down the hill of the color of the marble that you're rolling. So that's it. I've explained the entire game now in 30 seconds. You're ready to play. And kids, for 5-year-olds, it's great fun. You're rolling marbles down a hill. For hobby gamers, if you want to approach this thing as kind of a hardcore logic gate risk and reward analysis, the game will reward you for that. And that's part of the reason I think we won the that Kinderspiel, is that it is a super engaging game and the parts are great and it's fun to roll marbles down a hill. But the game is manufactured in such a way and is structured in such a way that you can actually have these really interesting discussions about, what's the risk of us rolling this marble here versus there, and basically be rewarded for that. And, despite the randomness of the rolling of the marble, planning ahead for that kind of stuff will reward you in the end, and you will do better as a player if you do that. So it's and that's a 10-15 minute game. You can put that on a table, and who doesn't love rolling marbles down a hill? So
nice. Well, congratulations on the win. That's huge.
It is. It's I had a very I worked with the English rules on this one, and marketing is really much my involvement. But that means that I have a Kinderspiel and I have a Kennerspiel on my resume. So now I just got to figure out a way of getting on a team with the Spiel des Jahres winner, and I'll have the trifecta, and that'd be kind of cool. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
I was always proud that there was one point in time where my name was in the rule books of Catan, Agricola, and Munchkin. And if you can, it's a pretty good spread. And so I think now this is the next unattainable trifecta, would be a Spiel, a Kenner, and a Kinder. So
what was the other one? The Kenner.
The Kennerspiel was, I was part of the team when Lookout won the one for Isle of Skye. And if you go back and look at the ceremony for that, I was actually in Berlin for that. Or in Berlin or Hamburg. Anyway, I was there for the ceremony, and so there's like the first half of the pictures was just it's the designers and it's Lookout team, and then at some point they coaxed me on stage, and I'm there looking very awkwardly. It's like, am I really supposed to be here? Am I supposed to, and my one big thing on that game was I ended up naming it. It was the whatever I don't remember what thematically we were kicking around, but for some reason, Isle of Skye was a proposal I had put on the table with the whole clans and all of that, and that seemed to be the one that stuck. So, small involvements, but it still takes some pride in that, which is good.
And you should. So we've talked about short games, long games. How about a hidden gem, a game that you don't think gets enough credit? I mean, I guess kind of Pompeii and Project L both kind of fit that as well.
There are so many games right now that I think, and even some popular games that I think, you can look at games through sort of the player's eyes. You can look at games through a designer or a developer's eyes and see two very different games sometimes. So, I've been, for the last few years, I will tell anybody who I can pin down, do the Sir, this is a Wendy's thing. About Raiders of the Lost Sea, which as good a game as everybody recognizes it is, I'm not sure people recognize the brilliance of that design and what a sea change that thing represents. Certainly to me, in the way that I look at mechanisms sometimes, because we've got this whole world of worker placement games, and most of them work off that same principle. I have a limited number of workers, so I can only do this many things. I can put a worker out on a spot, which means someone else doesn't have it, or it's limited access, whatever that might be. And Raiders of the Lost Sea brilliantly takes that idea of worker placement and turns it on its head a little bit and says, hey, you can go to any space you want. And all we're going to do is say you can't maybe do the thing in the right order that you want them to do, because you'll have to pull a piece off in order to put a piece down. And just opening up that universe of go anywhere you want, but it's got to be empty. And maybe it's not, it's full right now, and you can pull it off so it can be empty for your placement, but you're going to have to do that. I found that to be such a fascinating expansion of what a worker placement mechanism can be, and an interesting exercise to take a mechanism that everyone kind of says, well, this is the way the mechanism works, and can you drill down to make it half the mechanism work as a whole, as it were, which is kind of where, in the case of Raiders of the Lost Sea, you've thrown away the whole, well, you can only go where somebody, where you can only go to an empty space, and you're limited by the number of pieces you have. Well, you always are limited. In this case, you only have 2 actions you can take, but go anywhere. Just may not be able to do them in the order you want. And that's still enough of a decision and enough of a tension point to make that game just brilliant. So, that's a game that again, I don't think anyone's going to say that, Raiders of the Lost Sea flew under anybody's radar, but from a game design standpoint, it's certainly something that, I'm fascinated by. And of course, and I certainly don't want to put down somebody who is as good a designer as Friedman Friese, but I sometimes wonder if he is making games for game designers now, as opposed to the general public, because so many of the things that he puts out I find just fascinating, and I don't understand why they're not selling, hundreds of thousands of copies. And certainly things, his Fables series, or the F series, where he's kind of saying, here's a deck of cards, don't touch them, and we're going to play this game, and the game, all the rules are as part of the game. All the game is going to be explained to you as we play the game when you need to know it. And as a game design exercise, it's brilliant looking at the way those things roll out and kind of teach a game and then expand the game, and suddenly halfway through the deck, you're playing a really interesting, elaborate game that, you were taught by the game as you played the game. You look at something that things that he's done, like 504, which, as a developer, so 504 was a game he did that's literally a flip book game. So you had 9 mechanisms and 9 primary goals and 9 secondary goals, and to start the game you would do the flip book to pick a random one of each of those things, pull out the component kit you need to play it, and play that game. So ultimately there were 504 game variants in that box that were all just, this is going to be a flip economic game, flip with worker payment, flip, and secondary goal is going to be set collection. And you pull out the components for that, for whatever 187 was, and you played 187.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Friedman Friese's stuff is just a joy to look at if you have interest in game design, because his stuff is just so out there and so brilliant oftentimes, and I just wish his sales reflected what I think is his brilliance. So.
He's also behind Power Grid, right?
Yeah, so he's got he's getting the royalty checks every month, and that's good. We want him to live comfortably, but I'd also like him. He's just one of those, as a game designer, he's amazing.
He had that deck of cards where you're trying to get rid of them all. Again, it was the F series. I can't remember what it was called. Where you're trying to get rid of all the cards of numbers or a certain order.
Where if you took a trick or you took the skunk, you would have to sit out around and wait for it to go around. Yeah, it's
Yeah. And then
he has Friday. A lot of stuff, and and a lot of it's Friday copycat. He has an amazing body of work, much of which kind of flies under a lot of people's radar.
So when you're playing a game that has colors like Power Grid, is there a certain color that you prefer to be?
Oh, I've had that drilled out of me a long time ago. If I have a choice, I tend to gravitate towards black or blue. I've played a lot of yellow. I've seen, there's a personality test that kicked around a while back, which was like, if you choose red, that means you are impatient and impulsive. If you play blue,
yeah,
you're
aggressive.
cool and collected. If you play yellow, you chose last.
Yeah.
So I play a lot of yellow. That's the color that's there. That's what you're playing.
If you're yellow, you clearly did not choose
Yeah,
color.
you clearly have made poor life choices.
Yeah. So Kickstarter, you said you had a Kickstarter that just showed up. So are you an active backer on Kickstarter?
I am, especially through the pandemic. It was a way for me to, kind of have things brought to my house, which is nice. I tend to shy away from stuff that's kind of miniatures heavy. I'm not a miniatures guy at all.
Yep, me either.
And I particularly am not a fan of games that kind of bloat their price and their footprint on a table simply for the sake of having miniatures. I find that to be very frustrating, especially for as many years as I've worked to bring, to make games accessible, and accessibility means an appropriate tabletop footprint. It means a price point that can be attractive, that will attract people to it. And I think one of the issues, it's one of both the features and the bugs of Kickstarter, is that you get this chance to make the game you have in your head, which is all of these miniatures and fabulous pieces and oversized bits and all of that. And suddenly you have people trying to make the case that a $140 game is a gateway game, and it's not, and it never will be, because $140 by definition is not a gateway game. Is not a game. You can play it with other people and they'll be excited to play it and perhaps encounter it, but they are not, especially for people that are not familiar with games, are going to have zero interest in a $140 game. And that's the nature of the beast. Things like Gloomhaven notwithstanding, because Gloomhaven, I think, hit kind of a really interesting sweet spot between role-playing and, people that had that nostalgia, and certainly I think miniatures there do have a little bit of a place, as it does in a lot of role-playing adventuring. That's kind of a thing that, really as a visual tool can be a really useful thing. But for the most part, I'm doing a lot of tried and true stuff, things that either have already been out in the marketplace and I'm getting in on a second edition, or it's a designer, that I'm familiar with, or a company that I particularly like. And so I'm backing probably anywhere between, 6 to 10 big projects a year, and a little slush fund if something comes along. A friend of mine is doing a $20 something or another, and I can throw up that's a good thing as well. But I certainly don't see it as an evil. I think that, we've had this really amazing burst of energy and ideas and some amazing looking games. My fears mostly lie into, there's a lot of people that are not learning the skills required to sell their games to a specialty toy store and give them a reason to be able to put it in front of that entirely new very large audience, and are just content with selling X thousand to the hobby market and moving on to something else.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a lot to unpack there, because I see a lot of people going to Kickstarter, and because I also do board game reviews for another website and stuff, and if it's a Kickstarter, I'll quickly glance at the Kickstarter, and if I feel like, because I only get paid the production copy. So
right.
If I go to your Kickstarter page and I can tell you have no chance at funding because you've got a $25 game and a $100,000 goal, I'm not going to waste my time doing it. And your game may be awesome, but you need to rethink that stuff. And, I think a lot of people do that. And then, I could definitely use help getting into the hobby game stores more than we do. We just ordered a second round of our game. Of course, I don't think we're supposed to have it until like September. Thank you, COVID. But it's there is a lot that I think Kickstarter is good for, and I think there's a lot of bad. And I wish I only backed 8 or 10 a year, but so does my wife, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah.
last week I had 2 days or 3 days in a row. I had a Kickstarter show up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I was like, yeah, whoops.
Well, and there's always that awkward conversation. So, for example, somewhere here on the table, I think I have my Dow of Dork Tower, my Dork Tower collection. That was a Kickstarter I backed in 2018. And so, you have that conversation of, no, I didn't, this is 4 years ago. This is money that was from 4 years ago. This is not, I did not go out and spend a whole bunch of money this week. It's different.
Well, I spent a lot of money and backed a lot, but I spend a lot of it at $3 at a time on the print and plays. So I feel pretty good. I feel good about that. But then I look at all the print and play files on my hard drive I haven't printed, and I'm like, maybe I should not back so many. Do you remember what your first Kickstarter was that you backed?
No. I could probably look it up really. I literally, the before. There's an awful lot of stuff about the before time that has just been shrouded.
I just loved how you thought about it for a second, off camera. No.
Yeah, no. It's not a thing.
No, that brain cell's gone.
Yep.
That was awesome.
I'm firing up my backed project.
Yeah, I'm like the deep in thought. I'm going to get there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly I've got the super backer tag, so obviously I've done I've got it's certainly quite a few of them going back, but
well, I think the new one out right now that cracks me up is that $350 copy of Suro. You seen that one?
Yeah, I have. I bought the deluxe version before this became the deluxe version, and I don't think and as much as I like the game and I've played it several times, I didn't pull out the deluxe edition, so there's no chance that I'm going to pull out a $350 version casually anywhere. So to me, it just becomes that's going to be a dust collector, and there's just no point in me kind of digging down that road. If I am to believe my Kickstarter history here, the very first thing I backed is visible behind me.
Is it Ogre?
Yes.
Your big Ogre.
The Ogre Designer Edition, which if the date is correct, I've got the one that's right above it is the Tahiti board game I backed, which says it's a message from 2012. So yeah, that sounds about right. That's what got me into Kickstarter. It was Ogre Deluxe Edition.
So you weren't working for Steve Jackson in 2012 then, huh?
I was not. No, that's just Ogre is another one of those games though that is so brilliant, and to this day, still for asymmetrical 2-person combat that can be played in under an hour and really does create an amazing tension storyline. The idea that you get any of the stuff that you want, whatever mix of it, wherever you need to put it, go for it, put it down. This player gets this one piece. Boom. Rules of the game. Big piece gets to that side of the board, you lose. You blow up big piece, you win. Let's go.
Yeah.
Congratulations, we're playing Ogre. And it's a game that I teach kids when I was doing the Steve Jackson stuff, and they instantly get it, and they that idea, and you can give the kid the Ogre and he knows what to do. Just fire all your guns every turn at anything that's in range. And the adults trying to figure out, I can get him in howitzer range, maybe I can move the stuff around, and the kid's just like dooga 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 dooga. Next turn. Great. It's a terrific design, and it's one of those that's still so I couldn't back that fast enough, because I just remember being really enthusiastic about it, and that was 2012. So a $237, which I think is what that number. That was a huge number for Kickstarter back then.
That's still a big number now, but 10 years ago, you're betting the farm on that one.
Yep.
Wow. No, I haven't backed anything. I haven't backed anything that's broke $100. No, I've backed a lot of things, but none of them that add up to multiple hundreds of dollars. But I've not backed a single item over $100 yet.
I know there's a couple of 250s in there. We went all in when I was with Steve Jackson Games. I went all in on the Simon Munchkin game, mostly because my wife was thinking that she might actually start doing miniatures painting, and those figures from that game are just, those John Kovalic figures are just brilliant, and so it'd be a fun way to start.
She paint them?
There's at least the one. Which one?
Did she paint them?
She hasn't yet. No. They're all sitting in a blue box over here, which is, I'm sure, the way most Simon games work. You go all in and you put them in a box and you try to find a place in your house to put your 6 foot's worth of box, and that's about the end of it. So, sorry, Simon.
I'll tell you, I got their, I don't know where it is right now, but I got their Godfather game. Whew, if I was into miniature painting, I'd paint those suckers up. But I don't paint miniatures, so I keep trying. A lot of my friends are like, you got to get into it. I'm like, no, man, because then I'll really get into it. And I don't really want to get into that.
So back a long time ago, Steve Jackson Games got into doing metal miniatures. And at the time I was volunteering for Steve Jackson Games, and I was like, this is great. This is my chance to really get into miniatures painting, because I won't have to worry about flesh tones and faces and all. It's mechanized stuff. It's I can do some dry brushing and whatnot. This will be cool. I can do this. I can learn this. This is great. So I bought a bunch of them with my with my volunteer points, and so I had this amazing ogre army. And so one day I've got all my paint out. I've got my paintbrushes, my water, and everything. I'm all ready to go and all that. And about a half an hour later, I'm out front on a piece of newspaper going, "This is my red team. This is my blue team. I'm done. I'm out. I'm done.
Oh, man.
That's it. I for whatever reason, I do not have the painting bug. If I never paint a piece in the rest of my life, I am going to be just fine with that. So no interest at all.
I'm afraid to get into it. I'm afraid I'll get into it and really like it, and then I'll be buying a bunch of weird minis, and I don't have room to put all these weird minis. I don't have room for the games I have. I don't need to buy more games and have more minis, and then I got to find sort of the paint. I'm like, no, this is ridiculous.
It sounds like me and trading card or living card games. It's like, yeah, I hope I don't like this game because
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, I like Star Realms because it is not the collectible card game, and everybody, you buy the decks, you can buy the add-on decks, and add more stuff into it, and the starter hands, and whatever you want to do with Star Realms, and
yep. And for me, that same itch is scratched by Keyforge and now hopefully Soulforge Fusion, which is, here's a deck, play it. No deck building, and as long and I've got like one of the ranking programs, so I can actually start and say, oh, you want to play Keyforge, here's a couple of 70% decks or 80% decks, or things that are going to be fairly evenly matched, and let's play. Soulforge, I'm fascinated by the idea that it's kind of Keyforge, but now it's 2 half decks that you combine. So I can take, so if this half deck isn't working with this half deck, I can just find another half deck maybe and try something different and kind of look at some synergies. But, but even there in that instance, I think I bought the regular intro pack and 7 of the boosters. So I have basically 8 half decks from each faction, which I can mix and match however I want. And I'm probably about done. I know that they're going to want me to be part of organized play and all of that sort of thing. But, for me, that's enough for me to teach the game, to learn the game, to understand the mechanisms behind the game. And that's, I am so cold to the new that's literally all I need out of that game. Is going to be a few plays, and an understanding of kind of the intricacies of how the synergies work, and I'll be fascinated by that, and then I will be done with it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong
Yeah,
with that
and
at all.
Part of the fun of me being at conventions and teaching games is it's me being able to relive first plays. That's one of the reasons why I enjoy demoing games so much, is that I get first play experience, even if it's secondhand, by teaching this game again and again and again, and it fires that same pleasure part of my brain that playing a game for the first time gives me. So it's a good whatever mental twist makes that happen for me. It has served me well in my career to enjoy demos as sort of a surrogate first play.
Awesome. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's like I said, I'm bringing at my office now, bringing games to new people that aren't gamers, and seeing how they react to different kinds of games and different style of gaming. And I enjoy teaching games to people a lot. I enjoy bringing people together to play games and kind of living vicariously through them. Like you said, watching them learn a game for the first time and seeing that light bulb turn on after the first game of no thanks is always one of my favorite looks on their faces. Oh, having a whole bunch of cards is not good. No. And having the 35 is not bad. If you get the 35 down to the 32, you're only scoring 32 points, and you've probably got a stack of tokens. And it's fun to watch them. Another one of my favorite games to watch like that is Seven Wonders, because the first time they play Seven Wonders, they usually win by accident, and then the second
Right.
time they're like, "Oh, I got it," and then they get destroyed, and then the third time they're like, "Oh, I gotta be more balanced." Not really. You just need to pick about 2 different ways to score points and go all in on those 2. And by about game 4 or 5, they're like, "Oh, I love this game," and I'm like, "I know."
We have a game in our line, in the Amigo line, called Carnival of Monsters. It's a Richard Garfield design, and it is Magic crossed with Seven Wonders. So basically, you have land cards. You play out land cards, which give you the power to capture monsters and add them to your score pile. The really sneaky part about that game is that there's an economic system, because you either play a card, but if you can't play a card or don't want to play a card or want to defer playing a card, you pay $1 and you put it in a pile over here, and any point during the game you can pull a card out of that pile and play it. Simple enough, all good. Trick of the game, you only get $4 at the start of the game, and there's no other mechanism for you to get money. That's a default mechanism. So 4 cards in, you're out of money, and now you reach the end of a round. So if you think about Seven Wonders, those last 1 or 2 cards that are passed to you that are useless, it's like, oh, all right, I'll play it. Doesn't matter. Why not? In Carnival of Monsters, Richard Garfield says, "Oh, you just have to play it. Oh, you can't play it. So you got to put it over here in this pile, and you got to pay $1 to do it." And suddenly you've got to start paying attention to the things that are in the game that give you money. And now you've got this whole economic system bubbling under the surface to make sure you have enough money to do what you need to do, just to cover the things that, the garbage cards at the end of a round, let alone things you might actually be wanting to do. So yeah, it's interesting when people play that game and go, "Oh, it's Magic and Seven Wonders. I get lots of land. I get lots of monsters. Great." And then the money crashes on them, and it's like, "What did I do?" And you explain to them the way money works, and it's like, "Oh." And maybe their 3rd or 4th game, they'll start getting the hang of it.
And to me, that's the mark of a good game, is just being able to keep playing it, keep learning new ways to play it.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember Carnival Monsters come across the Herald, was it Envoy? When you guys came across the Envoy with that. So
yep,
I'll have to look into that one a little more. So looks like it can be played in an hour, so that's definitely right up my alley. Anything
first game's going to take you a little longer, but once everybody knows what they're doing, it's simultaneous turns. So
yeah.
Like a game of Seven Wonders, once you get comfortable with the symbols and the relationships, the game speeds up quite a bit.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Alex, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show today. And man, you have so much knowledge of the gaming industry and so many so many great stories. Oh man.
It's a lot of fun. It's, there's the part of you that says that I literally do get to travel around the world and play games with people, and that's wonderful. And then there's the other part of your brain that says, well, you better get up and do what you can every day, because I'm broken. I can't go back to a cubicle. This is it. Got to make this work for the rest of my life. So
yeah,
time to get to work.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it's been, I've had a lot of fun with this podcast and with my own board game, and now doing the conventions, and it's just such a great industry. Everybody in it's so nice and approachable, which has been the best part. And just having a good old time with the industry as a whole. I can't get enough of it. My wife thinks I have too much of the industry in the house. I beg to differ. I just need a room for it all. That's all. I mean, the kids don't need a bedroom, do they?
You just stack the games up, make them level, put a blanket, little mattress over the top. You'll be fine.
I mean, they won't even know they're there. If people want to reach out to you,
from the ceiling.
Yeah. So if people want to reach out to you, Alex, how can they do that?
So you can certainly reach me through the Amigo games. Through that way. I'm on Facebook. It was weird when I was filling out your form. I don't twit, but I do have an Internet Movie Database entry of all things. So, and it's not just one thing. I'm in a couple of movies. I've got writer and director credits for the the old podcast we used to do with Mayfair games. So, you usually find me in the weirdest places, and that's probably the way that works.
That's hilarious. Well, and as usual, if you want to reach out to me, it's facebook.com/groups/eatlunchandboardgame. My website's eatlunchandboardgame.com. And you can always email me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges.
They do.
When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.